Hello, St. Mary's. I got to tell you, I'm going to start here that when the Orioles take 3 out of 4 from the Tampa Bay Rays and are 2 games up in the AL East on a Monday, you're going to get the O's hat. So I'm celebrating with you all. Let's go O's. But really what I wanted to do today in this space is that this Sunday we're going to be kicking off our series Turntable Gospel for the 3rd year, I think. And I've never really had the chance to explain why this sermon series is such a big deal to me. So I thought I might take a couple minutes of your time and just offer a little testimony. Because music has always been central to my growth in faith. Now, you need to understand that I grew up in a musical home. My grandfather was an excellent banjo player. My dad is a very good guitarist. And some of my earliest memories are my father playing John Denver on his Martin guitar on our back porch at night. Now, you need to understand that the back porch was right underneath my bedroom window. And since I didn't grow up with air conditioning, my window was open every summer's evening, and his music would just drift up and off the back porch and into my window. And that was some of the earliest things that I remember about growing up on the farm and my earliest memories of music. But even with that, I remember distinctly the first time that I decided to sing a hymn. I was a little older. I was probably 6, 7, 8 years old. And my understanding of God and my place in the church was really starting to grow. And I knew that I wanted to participate in church in a meaningful way. And the hymn felt like a way that I could do that. I don't remember what the hymn was, but I do remember feeling that I felt something special when I stood up and I opened my hymnal and I tried to make the sounds come out. I remember feeling like I had made a very adult decision when I stood and sang along as Miss Betty Goodwin, our organist, played. Music was one of the first critical decisions that I ever made to worship. And because I decided to worship, it was a step in faith. And that remains a powerful memory for me. To this day, I still believe that we should sing it like we mean it, because we're singing to the Lord. And if you talk to my kids, they still laugh at me every time I come and sit down with them because they're like, "You sing louder than everyone." Well, yeah, because music was one of the first decisions I made to worship God. That aside, my upbringing in music was kind of funny. I remember as a kid that every once in a while, my parents' vinyls would come out and I got to hear everything from Boston to Marshall Tucker Band to Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. And I would watch in the nights when my parents would just play music. It was just the way that they wanted to spend their evenings. And I remember just watching sort of memories and emotions come over my parents. I could see what these songs meant to them, even if I didn't understand how music can impact us so. But as I hit my teenage years, there was increasing concern in church circles about the music that was coming out. And we're talking early to mid 90s and on into the late 90s. And so my teenage years were filled not with popular music, but with Christian music. And while I wish now that I had spent some more time with bands like Nirvana and the Foo Fighters and the Cranberries and Smashing Pumpkins, I did learn to tie more kinds of music to my faith. And so I didn't listen to hymns like I was too cool for that. But I did spend time listening to bands like Jars of Clay, DC Talk, Third Day, Audio Adrenaline, stuff like that. Even I listened to a little bit of like this whole weird ska thing that kind of went through Christian music in the 90s. And all of that told me that bands and different kinds of sounds could generate the same kind of worship in my heart as Miss Betty's organ did. I sang Jesus Freak from DC Talk as loud and as passionately as I did A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. And I remember I said, that's the same thing in my heart, even if other people didn't understand how that could be worship. It was for me. And as I headed to college, I was finally free of the shackles of sort of this Christian music box that I lived in. And the very early 2000s and Napster were absolute liberation for me. But 2 things happened to me in college. First, I found a pastor who had a deep, deep love of music. Not only was he a very good musician himself, but he taught me to love stuff that went beyond the popular and the immediate. And so he taught me to love everything from the sacred sort of monastic music of John Michael Talbot all the way through to the Eagles and Stevie Ray Vaughan and guitarists like that. To this day, when I hear the Eagles played, it is still a call to prayer. Yes, even Hotel California sounds like prayer to me because I connected to the pastor who taught me to pray. At the same time I was engaging with all these kinds of music, at the same time on campus, my best friends at Ursinus College all ran the radio station. And that, my friends, was a gold mine because recording companies would just send them free music. And so we would listen to all kinds of stuff. So much of it was terrible, and some of it was stuff that I still listen to this day and generates the same kind of emotions in me that Boston and Marshall Tucker Band and Kenny Rogers did to my parents. But what I discovered in all of that is that as we were listening to all this kind of stuff, I learned to have really deep conversations with people who did not share my faith convictions. And yet I discovered the love and the thoughtfulness they had for music, the message, and the audience. They weren't talking about Jesus, but they were talking about how do we love one another. Like Ben Gibbard was asking these questions alongside of John Michael Talbot. And it was my friends who taught me that music was to be appreciated and thought about. And they taught me that music could invite me to ask deep questions in the same way that sacred music could. And so, yes, in a way, Kings of Leon and let's see, who else am I thinking about? Bands like Idlewild and, oh goodness, I'm blanking on all this stuff now. But bands like that ask deep questions of me, just like Martin Luther did. And so now for me, as an adult, music is still an invitation to deep and profound questions, which is always an invitation to deeper faith. And so I want you to know that I am just at home worshiping with Fanny Crosby and Martin Luther as I am worshiping with Tom Petty and Ozzy Osbourne and Dave Grohl. And that, friends, is what Turntable is about. Turntable is not about, well, everybody's getting bored and nobody comes to church in summer, so let's just do something fun that might get some more people to come. No, that's not what worship is about. I want to invite you into the same conversations that I've been blessed to be a part of. To listen to music seriously and to hear running through all of it the deep gospel message and the deep questions of faith that God wants us to entertain. I do hope that it's fun. But I need you to know that it's also really serious. And because it's serious, the songs that we'll do, I hope, will invite you to ask deeper questions in your own spirit. And as we ask deeper questions, my prayer for each of you is that deeper faith is attached to those very questions. So don't just listen to the sermon. I invite you to spend time with the songs. Make the investment. Spend some time with them. As you go on a walk or you're trying to get chores done or whatever, pop in the AirPods and listen to these songs carefully. Carve out a couple of minutes before the sermon, and we'll announce each of the songs on the Friday before we do them. But spend some time on Saturday. Just sit and listen carefully. Maybe you'll hear it in a similar way that I do. Maybe you'll hear it in a completely different way. I don't care. That's the joy. But together, we'll do this work. So I hope that you won't skip out on the next 5 weeks, but rather I hope that you'll actually worship in a different way and that you'll worship deeper, whether you are a music lover or not. And if nothing else, maybe the songs that we'll do will invite you to sing our hymns just a little louder. So wherever you land and whatever we do, I pray that you and I together would make a joyful noise over the next month. And I can't wait to share this sermon series with you. And I hope, and we'll talk about this over the course of the week on social media, etc. I hope that you might invite some others to come along. So friends, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday and kicking off a sermon series which is near and dear to my heart. I hope it grows my faith, and I hope it grows yours as well. Peace and good, y'all.